My guest today has been described as Pakistan's answer to the rock star Bono. And if that doesn't pique your curiosity, how about the title of his recent memoir, Rock and Roll Jihad? Salman Ahmad's band Junoon have sold more than 20 million albums around the world. He's in the UK to talk about his music and his brand of open, inclusive Islam. Yes, he's a rock star, but does that qualify him to be a cultural messenger? Salman Ahmad, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it is a striking and a provocative title, Rock and Roll Jihad. But what do you mean by it?
Sure. Well, the backstory to this is that when I finished writing the book, my publisher, Simon Schuster, said, please don't use the word jihad in the book title.
And you've done it.
And I did. And the reason being, I said, look, on 9/11, there was a sinister case of identity theft. Those terrorists not only hijacked the airplanes, they hijacked Islam and Muslim culture. So if we abdicate culture, language to the extremists, what are we left with? So the reason I use the word jihad, in the context that I use it, is that when I was growing up, it was a word for self-improvement, to strive, to make an effort, to overcome your ego, and not only lift yourself up, but society up. So now, anytime anybody hears the word jihad, conjures up, images of violence and fear. And if we don't use this word, and I'm happy that the publisher surrendered or agreed that you can use it, it became a counterpoint to the word rock and roll. Rock and roll is a symbol for me, social justice, peace, freedom, and jihad is the struggle to reach there.
And in talking about jihad, as you've just done, you've already set yourself up as an authority on Islam, on theology, and I'm wondering what qualifications you bring to bear.
So great question. Prior to 9/11, all I wanted to do was sell millions and millions of albums, have hit songs, and travel the world playing music, and never talk about, issues of faith. But it seems like in a post-9/11 world, if you're a Muslim on this planet, you are drawn into this conflict because the extremists are defining your culture and your faith tradition. So, although I am a rock musician, and my job is to make people happy through the music, I also find that I'm questioned about how can you play rock and roll and be a Muslim. So I'm not an authority, but I am someone who's hugely curious about the journey of culture in the last 1400 years of Islam.
Right, but I'm interested in the degree to which you can, in a sense, be a credible messenger to Muslims, particularly, and we'll talk about the West, but particularly in Pakistan and other countries in South Asia.
Sure.
You sit here with your pork pie hat on and you've got that rock and roll look about you and you have the wealth and the album sales to go with it. You are a very particular kind of Muslim. And isn't that actually a handicap when you're trying to talk about the religion and the culture of a people literally thousands of miles away from you, but also, in terms of culture, light years away from you?
Well, okay, so first of all, they're not thousands of miles because I'm traveling all the time.
You don't live in Pakistan?
I have a home in Pakistan.
But do you live in Pakistan?
Well, my heart's both places, New York and Lahore. That's where I was born. So here's what I've researched this not only through the Quran and the Prophet's sayings, the Hadiths, but also spoken to scholars like Dr. Tahir al-Qadri, who's come out with a clear fatwa, a religious ruling against the terrorist definition of, suicide, jihad.
A leading Sufi scholar, and that strand, a very important strand of Islam, but of course I could cite to you a whole host of other scholars from different Islamic traditions, Salafi, Wahhabi traditions, who would not accept the word of your particular guide and spiritual mentor.
Sure, but if you look at 1400 years of Muslim culture and history, you find that these cultural tectonic plates, these grinding cultural tectonic plates between progression and these forces of regression, the forces of progression have always won, you know. And again, I am not enforcing a particular brand of Islam on anyone. All I'm saying is that the extremists have hijacked and distorted the faith tradition. For example, there is zero tolerance in the Quran over suicide. It's haram, it's prohibited. Under any circumstances, no Muslim can commit suicide. So the suicide bombing, not part of Islam, delink it from that. Secondly, taking one life is like killing the whole of humanity. It's a line from the Quran. Men, women, and children are not fair game in whatever war you're in. So any Muslim knows this. What I'm trying to say is that the extremists have hogged the public sphere, and the so-called radical centrists or moderates are being marginalized.
Well, I want to pick up later in the interview on what you, radical centrists, as you call yourself and others like you, what you can do in the public space to try and win hearts and minds. But before we get there, I think it's important for me to learn a little bit more about how you got into this music business. I mean, you were, as I understand it, you were born in Pakistan but raised substantially in the United States as a teenager. And it's there, really, that you picked up on rock and roll.
Yeah, as I write in the book, you know, sounds, when we're growing up, when we're 6, 7, 8 years old, or as a teenager, sounds intersect cultures and overlap cultures. And they grip you, they hit you in the heart. So there's a Sufi saying which says, if you see with the heart, all the masks fall down. I found myself in a suburban cocoon of New York at the age of 13, having no friends, being the only brown, overweight Muslim kid in school. And I had a friend who became a friend by giving me this ticket to go see Led Zeppelin at Madison Square Garden. And as I walked in, it was another planet. It was a parallel universe. You know, I saw on stage...
You fell in love with Jimmy Page.
Well, I saw this guy with a two-headed guitar, dragons painted in his pants, playing Kashmir.
Right. It had to be Kashmir.
So I said, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. That's the power of music.
When you go back to Pakistan, as you did, I think you were about 18 years old, your parents went back, you went back, and you've got this love of Led Zeppelin, of Van Halen, of a whole bunch of sort of 70s, 80s rock and roll superstars from the West.
Right.
What could you do with that love when you got to Pakistan?
Well, first of all, that's a false dichotomy that if you play guitar, look...
Yeah, but these are Western bands born out of rhythm and blues and rock and roll tradition. Pakistan isn't generating, or wasn't then generating, homegrown Led Zeppelins.
Sure, but if you look at Muslim culture in general, the guitar probably came out the jamming in Andalusia, in Spain, in the 15th century, where there were Muslim musicians, Jewish musicians, gypsy musicians, jamming with each other. That's how this music came.